beyond luxury. And that's kind of looking at what it really means to be a luxury brand today. It kind of feels as though luxury, either as a term or as an industry as a whole, is having a bit of an identity crisis.
There is definitely something that we are experiencing in our industry, is that there is a shift from what luxury actually means overall, which has always been very much linked to a product or a service. And today is not necessarily linked to that anymore. It's more about the experience that you deliver as a brand. So that's something that it's growing year by year, season by season, and I think now we are in the full reality of it. And of course, status is something that, you know, is been historically linked to something that you have, and now it's more something that it's linked to who you are, finally, but most importantly, who you are with.
I remember saying to people, I really want to start this jewelry brand that is a luxury jewelry brand in the sense that I wanted to create objects that were special and meaningful and felt like they were forever pieces. And so many people said to me, well, to create a luxury brand, you need a lot of money. And it needs to be a certain price point. And I actually genuinely believe that that's the most common misconception, because a lot of the people who buy our jewelry they already have Cartier and Tiffany, and they have all the big luxury, conventionally luxury brands. And in the beginning it grew because of the fact that there was no investment or infrastructure. So instead of shipping an item and it arriving in 90 minutes, I would hand deliver it because I couldn't afford to post it. And it means I would meet the customer and have a conversation and build this relationship with them. And in a world where it was actually more and more commonplace to have big online retailers who could deliver all of these incredible luxury services, such as on-demand delivery, free returns, like now, whatever you want, you can have it now. The only thing that I could offer that was actually luxurious was time and relationship. And I quickly learned from being a one-man band that was actually what people wanted, and that's what the rarity was, actually. Because if you think about what a luxury is, it's something that is rare and is special. And I think it's a really interesting landscape right now, because there are lots of big companies and brands who can offer incredible products and incredible services, but I really think that people more and more actually just want what we had in the past, which is this very kind of tangible experience and relationship, and people want to feel like they're part of something. I mean, people come into our studio and it's full of boxes, and I always say, I'm so sorry, there are boxes everywhere, it's really messy, it's not a beautiful marble top showroom. And they're actually, you can see their eyes becoming wide, because actually for them, they've been to every single big luxury store, they know what that is, but they haven't been inside a studio and they haven't seen how something's actually made, and the fact that there's a human being packing that box that will then go to Net-a-Porter, or someone writing their note that goes out in their customer order, and for them that's a luxury.
With luxury, you have the quality of the product over the quantity, as Rosh was saying. It's unique products, but it's also unique experiences. And I think as part of being a sustainable brand, you're able to communicate a lovely brand story, which people can really buy into. And then they can then share those experiences and then those stories with their friends. Everything's sort of moved to digital now, so it's very much about sharing across all of your platforms who you are and the brands that you believe in that are part of you.
In 5 years' time, millennial Gen Z spending will make up 50% of the luxury market. So that's a huge amount of money that's going into that from a certain section. Marco, for you, like the conversations you're having with your brands, how are they kind of shifting to become more like experience-led or millennial-friendly, or how is it impacting them, and how are they changing to plug into that?
Lots of our designers are actually millennials, and so that's already, you know, they're part of that generation, which is obviously, if you're a millennial, it's easier for you because you kind of speak the same language, or Generation Z. You know, if you think about Samuel from A Cold War, he was born in 1991, like me, so obviously, you know, there is that language that it's similar to us all. I think for us, for our generation though, it's, they say that fashion is the reflection of reality, and it kind of is. So whenever you need to speak, being, for the quote that you said, this group of generations, so between millennial generations, that being so relevant, which is absolutely true, it is important that you start speaking their languages. And for other brands that we possibly not necessarily work with, but there is some brands that of course are a little bit more mature, let's say, we try to find the best ways for them to integrate narratives that speak to a younger generation, which is absolutely important. The majority of us might have, our upbringing might be very similar, because lots of our parents might not necessarily like their jobs that they were doing, for instance. It's common for us to have divorced or separated parents as an element. We all been through an economic crisis 10 years ago, which affected us in every single way, me personally, my family. So, what I really think the generation is looking for is freedom. And when you look at that into retail, is the freedom of shopping whenever and wherever. We don't stick to rules, really, So for brands, it's important to see it as.
Fast fashion, obviously, I guess luxury or not, is so popular amongst those generations. Interestingly tied, I guess, contrasted to what you're looking at doing. How do you feel like you need to compete with that, and how do you look at it? And luxury is something that's inherently more kind of crafted. How do you think that can compete with this rise of fast fashion?
I think it's interesting, that thing of being able to scale and create things that are handmade and made in the UK and are super sustainable, but you can also deliver it tomorrow. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge for any kind of small luxury brand that wants to create in the UK. And it's not an easy thing to do, and you have to work hard at it, I think. And that's why I think so many brands do go overseas to manufacture, because you can scale faster, and you can have a better profit margin, and it means you can create 5 new collections a year instead of 2 new collections a year. But I think it's up to us as millennials and people creating brands now to set the tone and say, actually, there is another way of doing it. You can do both. You just have to slow down for a minute.
The people who shop with my business are not generally young women, because the people who shop at my business are fed up of buying a £2,000 jacket and then taking it home and realizing it's polyester, or are fed up with menswear having a classic fit, slim fit, extra slim, short, regular and long just for a size 36, and women's wear just coming in small, medium, large, extra large. Like, my customers they have money, but they're also just incredibly frustrated with what's out there. And in that way, luxury, just because it's £2,000, it coming in small, medium, large makes it no different from H&M.
I think with collaborations, it means that you can reach a broader audience. And I think luxury isn't just specifically for a luxury consumer anymore. People are buying into luxury as an aspirational piece, spending time looking at the quality of the product and investing in those sort of core pieces that will last in their wardrobes for years. I think fashion and trends, as Rosh was saying, like trends are sort of becoming a little bit more subtle. People aren't adopting them as much as obviously anyway. So I think there's more of that sort of core piece, or those really special, bespoke or unique pieces that might come from a collaboration that people are buying into. So that's probably why brands are going more into that direction.
For me, that's my biggest luxury, is meeting people that I feel super inspired by, someone you can sit down and have a coffee with, and they're so generous with their time, given that they're so busy and they're just under such incredible pressure, and they take that time to meet you, and you build a relationship and a friendship, and then this beautiful piece of work comes from that. And Louise then moved on to Lacoste, and we actually collaborated with Lacoste last season, and just that building of relationships, whether that's with a photographer, with another brand, or whoever it might be, those things being born organically because they genuinely mean something. I think to go back to your point of collaborations, I think collaborations for the sake of it doesn't necessarily work.
For sure.
But for me, it's been any collaboration I've done has been an indication of a friendship, essentially. It's interesting, the word luxury, it never actually crosses my mind all that much. I think in terms of connection and feeling. I'm very intuitive in that sense, and it has to feel right.
But if you do a collaboration, work out who's in charge, work out where the money's coming from, when it's going to be paid, get your money in advance.
For sure.
And get it all.
There really needs to be a meaning behind it. There really needs to be a purpose. It's just not, oh, let's take that and that, you know? It will be interesting to understand how the Adidas and Prada thing that you mentioned will go, because they're so late in the game, you know?
There are 5 areas, so governance, which relates to sort of within the business, social and environmental framework, community impact, and innovation. So those 5 areas go into quite a lot of detail, and it depends on the industry. Our assessment form sort of adapts to the answers of the questions.
How long is the form?
Depends how long you want to take over it, I suppose, but it covers those 5 stages in quite a lot of depth, and we would then ask for sort of certifications and things to show that you're doing the right thing.
Is there a fee involved?
There is a fee. It's according to your revenue, so starts at 2.5 and then goes up according to a year. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's off the back of that, we're a sort of a platform to communicate what the brands are doing. So we then work with the brands to communicate their sustainability stories and involve them in the content that we're producing and the events that we do throughout the year.
Who's nailing it at the moment? Who's doing the best work and why?
I think there's quite a variety across the brands that we work with. We have a lovely brand called McQueen's Flowers, which is quite well known, sort of global florists. They do a lot in terms of reducing waste, being careful about the amount of water they use, the energy that they use, and they also do workshops and work with the local communities and things. So there's a lot that they're doing, which is great and sort of covers all those sort of 5 areas. IWC are another that we work with. They have worked hard on reducing their packaging. I know that their box that used to get a watch in was sort of bigger than a shoebox for a small watch, and now they've turned that into sort of a leather travel watch case. So it's got a life rather than it's just a disposable item. So just things like that. A lot of brands, we work with brands on sort of advising them on how they can do things and sort of how they can sort of amplify what they're doing.
I think that luxury traditionally is that sense of everything comes in loads of tissue paper and 3 boxes
The
and a
unboxing
ribbon
experience.
and then
Yes.
another bag. And that traditional sense of luxury is now, I think, and it's being flipped on its head, and it's so nice to have the luxury to say, actually, I don't want that. I want a recyclable box, and I don't want to have all this wastage. And I think that the luxury consumer is becoming really passionate about that, and it's unfair not to offer it.
Because the more you ask, actually, especially to a younger generation, the more you learn, because there is so many things that I just, I think I kind of do have a knowledge, but the more I talk to designers, the more I find out. Because I have to say, the more people, maybe I'm just lucky, I don't know, but it seems to be an element that everyone is really much looking into, which is amazing, especially in a younger generation. And they were telling me, these guys, that their packaging, so their clothing is not necessarily 100% sustainable, because bear in mind that for an emerging designer it is absolutely difficult, and not only for an emerging designer, so it's difficult for big houses, imagine for up and coming. But they were telling me that the packaging that they were using was a packaging that maybe you know more than me, but you can dissolve in water and you can drink the water. So I was blown away, because I was just like, we need that tomorrow. Link me up.
Does it have like a flavour? Or it's like
But maybe
So,
we could start writing a business model.
what does your brand taste like is the new question.
For younger brands that are starting now, because a lot of the time when they are younger people as well starting it, it's more at the forefront of their minds, but it's also a little easier to integrate it into the business strategy from the beginning. I think for heritage brands it's a lot harder because they have a legacy that's not thought about sustainability at all. But there are challenges for those new brands that are smaller, so you have minimums of those more innovative packaging items that might be. So there are definitely challenges, but I think it's worth noting that brands don't have to, no brand's going to be 100% sustainable because people aren't sustainable. Like if you've got people in your business, you're never going to be sustainable. So, and there's always innovation, there's always changes, and there's not enough innovation at this point to be able to be fully sustainable. So it's just about communicating how your transparency of where you want to get to, what your goals are, and how you're going to get there, putting a time frame to it, and the consumer can then understand what you're working towards.
You see things where it's like, oh, well, this is cotton, therefore it's better, but the pesticides in cotton are one of the most carcinogenic things that you can put out in the planet. And so nothing is perfect. The Queen going fur-free means she's just wearing plastic. That is not necessarily better than something that's a byproduct. So I think that...
I'd love to see you have that conversation with her.
I will.
Listen, Lizzie.
I will, Lizzie. And to be fair, I think she's doing that more for animal rights than for sustainability. But I think there is this whole other thing with, to me anyway, the misconception of luxury where you can have a jacket that's being retailed for £2,000 being made in the same factory as a jacket that's been made for £80. And really, one might be a slightly better fabric, but it's still, even the £2,000 jackets on Bond Street are still polyester with polyester linings. To actually get something these days, what you're paying for is not necessarily a better make, better fit, or better fabric. It's just a bigger name and a bigger brand and a more famous model.
So at the start of this year, Vogue wrote, pop-ups have become the third pillar of luxury brick-and-mortar strategies alongside flagships and department stores. So I just want to look at those three things. So first one, pop-ups. Maybe Marco, why you see LVMH saying they want to do 200 pop-ups in the year. There's Gucci doing loads of things. Why do you think so many brands, luxury brands, are looking at this now? Why is it valuable to them?
What the consumer is looking for is not necessarily the product, is the experience.
From our point of view, we'd love to open a retail store, but don't necessarily have the budget to do it. A pop-up is an amazing way to be I'm going to use these pop-ups as a way to research what the best area would be for my brand. You can try it out. There's no long-term commitment. I have a friend who recently opened a store in LA and she signed a 10-year contract.
Oh,
a 10-year contract.
No.
And it's terrifying. And a pop-up is an amazing way to test the waters without putting yourself at great financial risk. You can tell your story. You can use it in so many different ways. You can do your showroom for market as a pop-up. And you can kill two birds with one stone. I think it's an amazing way of making retail more accessible for young designers who don't necessarily have the budget to open a physical flagship retail store right off the bat. And it means that when you do, I think you have more research under your belt and more kind of hands-on experience so that when you do invest that money, and hopefully you would have made your mistakes earlier on and you would have that ground research beforehand. I think it's amazing.
Have you done pop-ups before?
We've done a few. We'll be doing lots more next year with a view to using it as research. I basically just told you my business plan.
Sounds like a winning plan to me.
The store is the new media and the media is the new store. And I think that's absolutely right. There is...
Where did you read that? I feel like that's a quote from something we've written.
I don't
It's
know.
the
It was ages ago.
It's the Appear Here blog.
But I think it's really true because really the media is very much where we ended up shopping. Perhaps not your clients, as you were saying, but there is it's a reality. There is e-commerce is as I was saying earlier, we're not testing e-commerce anymore. E-commerce is real.
Yeah.
And the store becomes a sort of portal of your shopping experience, and it's important to have it because the tangible experience is still important, but that doesn't mean that the final transaction happens in store.
Marco, if we gave you Barney's now to curate, what would you do with it that would make it relevant?
I think in London we have we have great examples. There is a few department stores. I think London is still a leader on terms of department stores in the world. If you go to Selfridges right now, you will see the opposite of what Barney used to be in the past years. There is an amazing Daniel Arsham exhibition on the ground floor with special product collaborations with emerging designers, which are part of tomorrow. Then there is, the beauty and the makeup.
They've opened a cinema, I think, haven't they? Yeah.
Exactly. The beauty and the makeup. There is, I want to say thousands of girls getting ready for the weekend in there, and upstairs you go on the first floor is the yellow drop room, and you have this skateboarding platform, and you can look at the latest drop. It's all vibrating in there, and it's something that I think in Barney's, unfortunately, there were so many emerging brands, but the ultimate experience was missing. The consumers are horrified now by the mass market. They if you don't bring anything more on the table than what they can already find online, they're not gonna like it. Yeah. So I think what I would do with Barney is I would make sure, I wouldn't do copy and paste of Selfridges, but I think, I would
paint it yellow.
I would look at Selfridges as an inspiration. I would look at, really creating a world where everyone can have their own voice. I will make sure that if these two ladies will come to my department stores, they will feel comfortable. They wouldn't care if someone will be next to them because, and anyway, we're all part of the same business, and everyone has their own voice to express, and making sure there is people that want to hear it, and I'll make sure that I'll bring, that I'll build that community for them together with them.
Barney's was an institution that you had to be someone to go there, because it was that exclusivity of, in order to be part of the luxury world, you had to live on Fifth Avenue, and I don't think that someone wearing sneakers, maybe not now, but maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, would have felt comfortable going into Barney's because they would have felt judged. And I think what Barney's did wrong is they didn't move with the fact that luxury is changing, and that you don't have to live on Fifth Avenue to be a luxury consumer, and it's more accepting. And that's what I think where I think it went wrong, that it's about including everyone. You can't judge by appearances in that respect.
Brands who put sustainability at the forefront of their business plan for for the future generations. It's not just Gen Z, but then the children of the millennials, who are Generation Alpha, the next bunch, they're the ones that are growing up with sustainability at front of mind. So they're going to be buying into the brands who are clearly doing something. And it's about, I think, innovating in that sustainability space. There's a lot of rentals now. There's a lot of ways of repurposing product, renewing product. So it's innovating within that space to be at the forefront, I think.
If you want repeat customer, which, the cost of acquiring customer is massive. If you can get repeat business rather than constantly paying to acquire new customers, then you've got a winning business. So what can you do to create repeat business? Don't just think about the first purchase. Think about the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Think about them buying it as presents for people, buying it for their kids. What can you create that has that longevity? And don't just think about the first purchase.
That idea of being true to what your brand is, not looking around too much. Going back to what you said, Phoebe, in the very beginning, of not chasing a customer that you know is not your customer, just being laser focused and knowing what you are, and also treating everyone really nicely, whether that's the environment or the people on your team, the things that you make. Everything we do has an impact on everything. That's not just the materials we use, it's also the people that we work with, and the way that we treat our customers, but also the way that we treat our interns. And you have to be sustainable in a 360 way, and actually also being sustainable to yourself, because you can have massive growth and burn out. And it's the idea of playing the long game, taking your time, and just never doing anything that doesn't feel like you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.